The boarding announcement echoed through the massive spaceport terminal for the third time, and Danny Carter still stood at Gate 73, helping an elderly Vexorian woman locate her missing luggage instead of rushing to his own gate where his flight to the Andromeda sector was preparing for departure. The alien woman named Zira had 6 delicate arms that trembled with age, and her crystalline eyes shimmered with distress as she explained through her translator device that her medication was inside the lost case, and without it, the long journey home would be unbearable for her failing health. Danny had noticed her struggling alone near the information desk 20 minutes ago, and something in his nature would not allow him to simply walk past someone in need, even if it meant missing his own expensive ticket to the business conference that could change his career trajectory. He guided Zira through 3 different baggage claim offices and finally convinced a reluctant Thorian attendant to check the secondary holding area, where misrouted luggage often ended up forgotten and dusty. When they finally located her case behind a stack of cargo containers, Zira's entire demeanor transformed, and she gripped Danny's hand with 2 of her smaller appendages while tears of relief formed in her ancient eyes. By the time he escorted her back to her gate and made sure she was safely checked in, Danny had missed his flight completely, and the next available transport to Andromeda would not depart for another 48 hours. He stood in the rebooking line feeling the weight of the missed opportunity, but unable to regret his choice because the grateful smile on Zira's face had been worth more than any business deal there. Ticket agent was a tall Mantarian with 4 eyes who looked at his boarding pass and then looked at him with an expression that seemed almost like recognition, before she started typing rapidly on her holographic interface. Within moments 3, security officers appeared beside him, and Danny's heart sank with the assumption that he had somehow violated some obscure interstellar travel regulation by helping Zira. Instead, the lead officer, a professional-looking woman named Captain Hayes, asked him politely to follow them to a private office, and Danny complied with growing confusion. The office turned out to be an executive suite, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the departure lanes, and sitting behind an enormous desk made of what appeared to be living wood from Epsilon Prime was a stunning alien woman with skin that shifted between shades of deep blue and violet. She had the elegant features of a Lyran diplomat with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern, and when she stood to greet him, her presence filled the room with an almost magnetic authority. Her name was Commander Lissa Torn, and she introduced herself as the Director of Operations for Stellar Wings, the very airline whose flight Danny had just missed. He stammered an apology, expecting to be reprimanded, but Lissa raised one slender hand to silence him and told him that she had been watching the security footage of his interaction with Zira. Danny felt his face flush with embarrassment at the thought of being monitored, but Lissa's expression held no judgment, only curiosity. She explained that Zira was not just any elderly passenger, but the grandmother of the Vexorian ambassador, and that her safe journey home was a matter of diplomatic importance that had been causing Lissa considerable stress. The previous staff had been unhelpful and dismissive, and Lissa had been preparing to file formal complaints when the security feed showed a human passenger abandoning his own travel plans. To assist Zira with genuine kindness and patience, Danny tried to downplay his actions, saying that anyone would have done the same. But Lissa shook her head with a slight smile and told him that in her 15 years managing interstellar travel, she had seen thousands of passengers walk past those in need without a second glance. She touched a control on her desk, and a holographic display appeared showing Danny's passenger profile, including his frequent flyer number and his booking history with Stellar Wings. What she showed him next made his breath catch in his throat, because according to the records, Danny Carter was not just a passenger, but the majority shareholder of Stellar Wings Galactic Transport. He stared at the information in disbelief and insisted there must be some mistake, because he was just a small business consultant from Earth who had saved up for months to afford this one trip. Lissa's 3 eyes studied him with intensity, and she asked him if he had ever heard of Carter Industries, a massive conglomerate that had been founded by his great-grandfather 70 years ago. Danny admitted he knew his family had owned some businesses decades ago, but after his parents died when he was young, he had been raised by his aunt, who never spoke much about the family history, and he had assumed whatever wealth existed had been lost long before his time. Lissa pulled up more documents showing that his great-grandfather had established a trust that would transfer full ownership of multiple companies including Stellar Wings to the eldest Carter heir on their 30th birthday. Danny had turned 30 last month, but he had never received any notification, and Lissa explained that the trust administrators had been trying to locate him for weeks, but his last known address was outdated, and their messages had been going to an abandoned apartment. The reality settled over him slowly, like gravity, increasing one increment at a time until he could barely process what he was hearing. He owned an interstellar airline and had just missed a flight on his own carrier to help a passenger who turned out to be related to a major diplomatic figure. Lissa seemed amused by his shock, and she told him that his actions today had demonstrated exactly the kind of character his great-grandfather had hoped would guide the company. She offered him a complete tour of the operations and suggested he might want to postpone his business conference to learn about his unexpected inheritance. Danny agreed in a daze, and over the next several hours Lissa showed him everything, from the maintenance hangars where sleek ships were serviced to the customer service centers where multilingual staff handled passenger needs across 50 different species. Everywhere they went, employees greeted Lissa with respect, and Danny noticed how she knew many of them by name and asked about their families and concerns with genuine interest. He found himself drawn, not just to her competence, but to the way she moved through the world with confidence and grace. Despite managing an operation that transported millions of beings across the galaxy each month, during a break in a quiet observation deck overlooking the main concourse, Lissa asked him what he planned to do with his inheritance, and Danny admitted he had no idea, because this morning he had been worried about affording rent, and now he apparently owned assets worth billions. She laughed, and the sound was like crystal chimes in a gentle wind, and she told him that wealth and ownership meant nothing if he did not use them to make people's lives better. He thought about Zira, and how a small act of kindness had led to this moment, and he asked Lissa what she thought his great-grandfather would want him to do. Lissa became serious and told him that the old man had built Stellar Wings on the principle that every passenger deserved dignity and care, regardless of their species or economic status, and that Danny's actions today proved he understood that principle instinctively. She suggested he could either sell his shares and walk away wealthy, or he could actually engage with the company and help her continue building something meaningful. A choice seemed obvious to Danny, even though he knew nothing about running an interstellar business, because the idea of walking away from something his family had built, and from the opportunity to work alongside someone like Lissa, felt wrong. Told her he wanted to learn and to help and to honor whatever vision his great-grandfather had started, even if he would inevitably make mistakes along the way. Lissa's expression softened, and she reached out to touch his shoulder with one elegant hand and told him that his willingness to help a stranger at personal cost told her everything she needed to know about his potential. Over the following weeks, Danny moved into corporate housing near the spaceport and began learning the complex operations of Stellar Wings with Lissa as his primary guide and mentor. He discovered that his instincts for treating people well translated surprisingly effectively into business decisions, and the staff responded positively to his accessible management style. Lissa taught him about fuel economics and route planning and diplomatic negotiations with planetary governments, while he brought fresh perspectives from his years struggling in the working world. They began spending long hours together reviewing operations, and gradually those professional conversations evolved into personal ones, where they shared stories about their different worlds and cultures. Danny learned that Lissa had left her home planet young to explore the galaxy, and had worked her way up from a junior gate agent to director of operations through sheer determination and skill. She confessed that she had never expected to find someone who understood both the business challenges and the fundamental importance of compassion that made Stellar Wings different from corporate competitors. The attraction between them grew obvious but complicated by their professional relationship and the vast cultural differences between a human and a Lyran. One evening, while reviewing quarterly reports in her office, Danny finally asked her directly if his feelings were completely inappropriate, given their working relationship. Lissa smiled and told him that on her world emotional connection